If you've just jumped in here to this episode, I'm assuming you've already finished part one and are just as enamored with Melissa and the story of her business Violet that's set to drastically improve our experience of death and grief. But if you're like, what the F are you talking about, Kim? This episode is in two parts today. So it's a bit of a longer one, and I wanted to make it accessible for you by splitting it into two so you can dip into it when your time allows. But it's necessarily a longer one. So if you are like WTF Kim, head back for part one. It's in the feed now for you. Or if you're ready for part two, you've already listened and are hanging out for the next bits, let's get into it. We left part one of our chat off chatting about the important and impactful experience of raising capital. In part two, you're going to hear all about the big shift away from service-based revenue, the process of finding product market fit, reshaping a professional identity, taking an active role in PR, giving yourself permission to be an authority, and exploring the extremes of our emotions. Let's get into it. So it's a very different commercial model for the people behind the scenes, for your good self, for your co-founder, for all of those who work on the business than consulting. Of course, client comes in, client pays bill, bills get paid, salaries get paid, founders get paid. This, I imagine, is a very different revenue model and personal income model as well. How have you been able to manage that change? What has that been like for you?
Very steep learning curve. Like a technology company, its growth trajectory is like very, very different to growing a consulting business. Structured fee for service contracts in consulting, and you can kind of turn the tap on, win the business, grow the team, yada, yada, yada. The technology business is all about this magical term to add to our glossary list of product market fit, where you have built the right product to solve the right problem and create the right value for your customers or your users, or in our case, both. And you're just working really hard to get the first version into people's hands, even though you're terribly embarrassed at how crude and unpolished and awful the first version is. The most important thing is to just ship it, get people using it, and then start to test all of the hypotheses and assumptions that you have as a founder and as someone working in that technology company, because you want to design for the user. So you're constantly running user testing and understanding what works, what doesn't work, what kind of language and UI and process are people looking for that will keep them in your product. And that can sound a bit crass and commercial, particularly in a topic area like ours. But at the heart of the product that we've built is this, it's called the Violet Plan. And it is really all the things that we believe people need to talk about and do to be appropriately prepared for this life stage. And you might do that in your 40s when you take out a mortgage or a life insurance policy, or you might have a kid, or whatever those kind of triggers are. You also might do it in your 60s because you might be considering retirement, or you might have had a health scare, or something is triggering this desire or motivation to get those plans in place. Or, as is the case so prevalently now, you may be caring for an aging parent. So really, the person we're designing for with these early versions of Violet is the baby boomer. She's probably the eldest daughter. We call her Marie. She's, maybe late 50s, early 60s. And her mum, Eileen, is in her 80s. And she's lived independently for quite a long time. And she's had a couple of falls. And suddenly she can't live independently anymore. And that family is having to make plans for increased levels of care, probably residential care. And that's just like a maelstrom of emotions and decisions. So if we can work with Marie ahead of all that happening, and she can build a Violet Plan for her mum, for herself, for her husband, for all the people that are important to her, then she has a sense of what is really important to Eileen, her values and preferences and her care goals, and also have power of attorney in place, guardianship in place, help Eileen prepare a will and have her beneficiaries understood. We call it SADMIN, like the SAD administration, but it is so time, cost and heartache heavy for people, and so many parts of it are avoided, and then it just becomes a real mess.
I think I saw a LinkedIn post of yours once speaking about Sadmin relative to shares and how challenging shares are to deal with post somebody's death as a partner, as a wife, as a husband. And it really got me thinking about that, to be like, wow, like there are just so many things that we could be making easier on ourselves. We prepare so much for the unknown. Like in business, we're happy to prepare content marketing strategies to help support us with what bloody social media posts we have to do for the next 3 months. We're happy to do financial planning in terms of how do we pay our BAS, what kind of payment plans can we go on to manage our cash flow. Like we're super happy to do that stuff, but to not put these sorts of things in plans for the only thing that is actually guaranteed in life, which is death, just like continues to blow my mind.
I know. It speaks so much to the taboo. I mean, that post that you're referring to, that was like my own really personal story of Sadmin pain, because Mauro had this only very small shareholding, right? Not a lot of money, but because he didn't have a will, it never came to me, and it was just sitting in the ether with the registry. And of course, that should go to my kids. I kept putting it off. I knew what a headache it would be. It literally took me 8 years to get to it. It's pretty slack considering the work I do. But when I went to finally go and see a lawyer, because I couldn't work out how to do it cheaply and by myself. So I went to just my local lawyer. He told me that I would have to get a friend, someone that knew us when we were married, to write an affidavit to prove that our marriage was valid at the time of his death. I mean, that's awful.
How much more validity do you need other than we were married?
Just disrespectful. Like, it's just a horrible part of this. So I had to do that. Luckily, I had a very good mate who understood my very embarrassed and humbled request, and he did the affidavit. But I just thought, that's just shitty. People shouldn't have to do that. So it's just another really potent and poignant example of some of the stuff that has to be fixed.
Yeah. I mean, look, I could do another entire podcast series on bureaucracy and its limitation in sovereignty and all of those topics, because it really gets my goat. But I will stay focused on the topic of business at hand. And I want to bring us back to, I guess, the commercial modeling of your business and working that out, because I do really hear what you're saying in that it's a funny model to want to commercialize at surface level, because, we're talking about death, we're talking about something so serious, but we do exist in a world of capitalism. Like, we need money to live. And in order to do such important work that helps so many people through Sadmin, through all of these phases, you need to be creating a profitable company. So, I think like those two conversations, very Australian of us to, go like, oh, we feel a bit icky about commercializing something like death. But it's like, well, how else do you get the message out there other than to have a huge company that can positively infiltrate our society and deliver a great product that people really, really need? Yeah, it'd be lovely to do that for free, but like that's not the world that we live in. How have you gotten to, I guess, like feel really, really comfortable with that and own the position that you are a business owner and you need to earn money from this in order to make this incredibly important mission real?
I mean, that had to happen when we decided to create the spin-off company, and Techstars reinforce that every day. If you're not solving problems or creating value, you don't have a real proposition, right? I would have still been in the not-for-profit space, making something that was helpful and useful and really nice to have, but not necessary. So what we did, and I knew a lot of this because I'd been kind of working in that space with different companies, but we really had to look at where is the cost sitting in the world of business and in the system around this issue. And it's really in two distinct areas. So if I start talking too many stats, just like wave your hand at me and I'll stop. But the first and the biggest cost is the amount of time people spend in hospital in the last 12 months of life. So all of the research says that 70% of us would want to be at home. For as much of that period, we would want to die at home if we could have that. We'd want our family and our friends and that all that love and warmth and familiarity around us with the right services. Like, is that what you would want if you asked?
Absolutely.
Totally. Like, it just passed the conversation test every time you ask it. But less than 15% of people get that experience. And that's pretty common in other Western markets. 1 in 2 people die in hospital. You've only got to open any paper on any day and read about the bed block, the ramping, the overwhelm that's happening in our public health systems. And we've got an ageing population where, the number of people dying each year is going to double in 15 years. Wow. So the more prepared and supported people are with the right alignment around care goals, the better the decisions are and the less preventable hospitalizations happen. That's the global evidence base. So what we're saying to public and the private health systems who spend, like somewhere between 8 and 11% of the federal health budget is spent on people in the last 12 months of their life. Like it's an enormous chunk of the health budget, and it's not giving people the experience they want. So when we look at an average of 33 days spent in hospital, 10 of those days are unwanted, unplanned and unnecessary, again, according to the evidence. So what we're saying is let's create a product that helps people be better planned and supported and reduce some of those 10 days. I'm not going to wave a magic wand and just make all of them disappear, but what would it look like if we could reduce them by 3 or 4 or 5? It turns out it would look like about $1 billion return to the system and about 500,000 hospital beds, hospital days return to the system, because 1 in 4 beds is an elderly, frail person in the last months of their life and they don't want to be there. So that's the first bucket of cost, reducing preventable hospitalizations. The second bucket of cost is this idea of SADMIN, because it's a real iceberg. The businesses that are measuring this are only measuring the very top of it. So the banks will say, it takes between like 5 and 30 hours for us to resolve a single estate. Because people don't have the documents they need, they're really distressed, they're disorganized, becomes an awful experience for the customer. It's really hard for the bank employee. It's just messy all around. So again, what Violet is trying to do is help reduce that disorganization and distress so people know what they need to have in place a bit earlier. It makes them just feel a little bit more supported and prepared as they go through it. And then when they do connect with their super fund or any of their insurers or their bank or their lawyer, they've got the documents they need. And it's not a kind of a total mishmash of emails and missing PDFs. And I know from my experience, Kim, I found putting Mara's death certificate on the counter so painful. I would just want that to live in the cloud, and I would give permission for my bank to access it or whoever needed it. I don't want to look at that thing. And I certainly don't want to stand at Service New South Wales. This is a real experience. You hand it over and that person looks at it and realises what you've been through, and then they just give you this really wobbly kind of, I don't know how to handle this situation. And then you're like, oh my God, now you know the worst thing that's happened in my life. This is uncomfortable for both of us. So we shouldn't have to do that. We just shouldn't have to do that. But that's the way the current system is. So help people get better prepared earlier and have everything they need in a logical and highly secure place, and then get it to the businesses that need it to make that a lot lower friction. That's the goal. So 2 costs, hospitalisation, admin. That gives us a really strong value proposition for really 6 or 8 big industries globally. Don't have a solution in this space.
That's incredible. So are you able to take that information then to some of these companies and say, hey, for this cost, I can help you solve this huge problem?
That's exactly what we're doing. It's just that you have to educate them, because it's not a cost. And I am still intrigued about this. I don't know if this is because it's a bit taboo, or it just doesn't seem to be a cost that's being accurately measured in the system. So we're doing some work at the moment with an actuary and a health economist to get those numbers independently verified, because there is a real education process as part of our sales journey.
So what role, and, I feel like it's a huge role, because, it's essentially how I came to find out about you. In that kind of B2B relationship, it's kind of almost like B2G, isn't it? It's like business to government. Or
it is.
It's a whole other sector. What role has PR played for you in that, in establishing some groundwork there?
Recently, a very important role. Prior to that, a very sporadic role. But every time I did do national media, if I was on the radio or we had some good national coverage, we would just see a huge spike in demand. And this is way back in the days of the not-for-profit. So again, it showed, if you think of those signals, there's an appetite, there's a need for this, but people don't know that it exists today. So it was pretty sporadic, but I knew the value of the PR when it happened. But I think it's only been recently working with some wonderful new people in this kind of new world of PR, not the old world of PR, and starting to build the right relationships directly with the journalists, directly with the media, where they get a much more authentic version of what this story and business and motivation is all about. And I get to work with them directly. That's been really, really successful. So I've had a lot more media in the last 6 or 8 months. And of course, then that leads to more, which is great, because we just want people to know this thing exists to help you. There's about 1.6 people just in tiny little Australia that need this help every year. And so we want to let the world know that it's being built.
And thinking about that, how you have to show up in PR as an individual and as a business owner representative of a business. Thinking back to the Melissa who was servicing clients as a suit in a consulting business, and then seeing the Melissa now who has gone through investing through Techstars and being able to do the work to uncover the very human problems in an effective way so that you can sit here with me and articulate the problem at hand, like you, I'm sure, have done for so many individuals when you've been selling them on this concept to go, this is bloody important, give us some money, help us grow this thing. But to show up as that person in that moment and confidently do the sell, to talk to major media, to appear on television, to put your words into written format, to be rejected along the way. How have you had to grow as an individual through that process to become the person capable of it?
So much. And on a number of fronts. I think probably the first big step was the kind of leap I had to take to say, yes, this is where I'm going to focus my life's work and my effort. That was pretty scary at the time because I had a kind of successful business, like it wasn't anything amazing, but it was a good, sustainable, boutique-y offering, but it wasn't meaningful to me. So yeah, kind of reshaping from a professional identity piece, that was a big growth curve. And then I think a lot of the learning and the work that I've done around, what is leadership? Leadership is really the skills to challenge the status quo. It's quite different to this idea of authority that we have, where authority is often serving of the status quo. And we need direction and protection and order. We need authority in our lives, in our civil systems. But leadership is the skills and the courage and the tenacity to show up and poke that bear and say parts of that are not working as they should, and bring people along the journey with you. And I think I've learned so much about that. You've got to be very, very aware of bringing people along at a pace that they can manage, that they can stay with you. And that's your customers, your stakeholders, your board members, your staff, because kind of I'm over here, right? I'm like really committed to this end stage solution. And as Tom will always say, well, that's the 42nd kilometre of the marathon, but let's just run the first 3. So you've got to constantly meet people where they are and bring them on the journey with you. I think that's been an incredibly important learning. I think I've just had to do a lot of work around authorising myself to be a kind of a voice for this, because that took a little while, Am I the person for this? Do I have the skills for this? Am I going to be accepted to be the voice of this? Particularly because I'm not a doctor and I'm not an academic. So there are parts of the system that, it's quite easy to discredit me really quickly in that work. So you've got to kind of build the skills and have the stomach for some of that pushback. And I have gotten increasingly more comfortable with that stomach. Definitely I didn't have that in the first couple of years. And then the other really important dimension that I think is worth highlighting is building incredible people around you, because you can't ever do it alone. You need the skills, you need the advisory, you need people to show you your own blind spots, because we've all got them, and you need trusted people to help you see them and address them, and to just give you the support that you need as a founder and an entrepreneur, because some days are really tough. Something falls through, something goes wrong, you're like, oh, God, this is so hard. And it's those days that you need to be able to pick up the phone or go for a coffee or a glass of wine and just have a really honest chat with people that know you and know the work you're doing and will give you that support.
What does it look and feel like to not have the stomach? Like, take me to a moment where, those years where I know they probably feel like a lifetime ago now because we like to put these things in the cupboard and be like, I don't know what I think about that ever again. But what does it look and feel like to not have the stomach and then to develop that?
Well, probably the most acute version of not having the stomach was like in the couple of months after Mara's death, where I was, I had a very good friend and she said to me, listen, as long as I can put the lid on the recycling bin, we're okay. But if there's any wine bottles starting to, tip out of the side of that bin and we can't get the lid on it, there's a conversation to be had. So that gives you like an idea.
I like that.
Yeah, she was just great. And then to not have the stomach kind of through the professional journey, it's just, it's the moments that we all get where we get really upset or really disappointed or really offended, or you kind of go to the extremes of your emotion. You react, and you need that inner circle around you to just kind of contain you and bring you back. And you just got to have enough balance in your day and in your week. For me, that's been a really big thing, probably only in the last 3 or 4 years, to make sure that my week is structured where I'm getting enough exercise, enough downtime, that I'm not feeling fried. Because, of course, when you're fried, you're just so more susceptible to those big highs and big lows. Maybe it's the spine, not the stomach. Like the stomach is the kind of courage piece, but I think the spine is the strength piece. And you've just got to kind of give yourself enough breathing space and routine and the stuff that, gives you personal strength.
I think that's so valuable, because I know from the people I speak with and from my own experience, you want the big thing, you want the incredible payoffs, and you're willing to appreciate the journey along the way, and do understand in some sort of rational part of your mind that in order to get to the payoffs, you will have the uncomfortable moments. But when the stomach drops, when the heart swells, when the throat constricts, when the sweat seems to come out of areas of your body you didn't even know you had, and you have those in the moments where you feel like, I could actually fall apart here. Like, I don't know if I'll ever stop crying. I don't know if I'll ever not want to throw up. I don't know if I'll ever feel confident, or I ever won't spiral and look at myself in the mirror and be like, you can't do this. You're not good enough for this. Like, realizing that that's so much of this journey, that you do have to go through that to meet the you on the other side who can tolerate a little bit of that stomach clenching, bile inducing fear that we get from, be it, pushback from someone, a rejection, be it just having to show up on a stage and do something and not feel like you did a good job, or any of those things. Like, it's so valuable.
I mean, there's the emotional side of that, right? And then there's also just the learning side. So one of the really helpful things I learned in the adaptive leadership world, and it's in other areas of leadership theory too, is like your learning edge, the edge of your competence, where all the things that you're good at and you've got in the bag, you get to the edge of that and you're suddenly staring down things you've got no idea how to do. You don't even know the words to describe them or how to scope them, let alone how to do them. And it's really scary. Like, it's really uncomfortable. And you've got to learn to sit with that discomfort if you're going to go through the growth that actually pushes you forward. So that, to me, was just a really useful concept to recognize that physical shit feeling, oh my God, and realize actually, what's happening here is I'm just in a competence area that I don't have. I either have to develop it or I have to find a team to help me solve it. I've got to kind of step into a bit of the unknown.
I just will take that away with me as a beautiful summary of when I inevitably have that feeling, probably in 2 hours, because it seems to cycle every few hours across this journey.
It's a big parenting theory in my experience, like haven't dealt with this issue before, have we? Just same feeling.
Oh, the learning edge. That is so much about, what this podcast is for bringing some light to that feeling, hence the title, Unemployed and Afraid. It's the only way I can encapsulate the feeling of being on the edge and feeling completely untethered and completely terrified and sick to the stomach. But it's so great at the same time. It's a real juxtaposition experience of this
Yeah, yeah.
entrepreneurship. And, you have articulated so much of that through the stories that you've shared. And I am just so incredibly grateful for what you've shared with me here today. I'm sure the listener, I'm sure you listening can hear how important this business is and why I wanted to dedicate so much time in this podcast to exploring your business as well, because I really do believe in it. And I hope that more people explore it. And I hope it goes all the way and 10 times more different ways to really infiltrate, because this is just so incredibly important. So super grateful, Melissa, to you for making the time to share so generously with me, to share so generously with the person listening to this podcast as well, and to say thank you for how much you've shared. What can we do? How can we support you to help you grow Violet?
Well, I think the first thing is we've all got people in our families who are aging, and anyone that is over the age of 70, you need to have this conversation with, and it's a little scary and it's probably going to take multiple attempts. And the first attempt might not go so well, but go for progress over perfection. There's heaps of resources at meetviolet.ai. Try and have some of these conversations, because as scary as it feels, what I've seen time and time and time again is actual palpable relief from both people when you actually make the invitation to have the conversation and that person says, yeah, that would be really important to me. So I think that's just a call to arms nationally. We need to be talking to the more senior people in our lives and talking about what is most important to them as they age and in the last stages of their life, and how would we work together to create a plan to help them have an experience that is the best it can be. And of course, once we've done that, we'll all be just a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more familiar, and then we can start to ask that question of each other, and then we can do it a little bit earlier, and so on and so on. But I think as we sit here looking at an enormously aging population, we've got to start with our loved ones who are in their 70s, are in their 80s. They deserve to have the experience that they want to have, and it's really up to us to make that more possible. So that would be my ask. And I'm confident that anybody who's looking for help or tips or resources or advice, that's what we've built. So please make use of it and let us know. We'd love to hear your feedback. Contact us, reach out through socials, whatever you want. We're so open for the feedback. But yeah, we've really got a bit of a duty of care to do this. I think it's got to start from that place.
It just is the epitome of the life edge, isn't it? Having a courageous conversation like this and, facing the uncomfortable thing, which is, as business owners, we know innately now that we do every single day. It is just applying that same courage to the conversation of life, and it's something we're all going to deal with. So I just couldn't be happier with that as a takeaway. So thank you, Melissa. Of course, I will have the link directly to the website, so that listener on your phone, if you're listening on phone, look down, go to the show notes, you'll see a link there. You'll be able to click straight through to the website. I'll put the link to your socials as well, so we can bring Violet into some of those areas of our lives as well, so that we can be gently reminded to go do the thing. Melissa, thank you. It has been really, really wonderful chatting with you today. I appreciate you spending the time.
Thanks, Kim. I've really enjoyed it too. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the podcast for small business builders with your host, me, Kim Curtin. If you love it, you can say thanks with a star rating and a review. And of course, join the community on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Find us at Unemployed and Afraid wherever you're hanging out, and I'll see you there.